Good afternoon, everyone. Today my talk will be about mind games and melodies, and we will start by playing a game. Okay, so here I have two different melodies, and the challenge for you here is to guess which melody corresponds to the story that I am about to tell. So the story goes like this. A big boat hits ice. Wow, I think I found true love. I'll never let go. Let's go. Keep that in mind when you listen to the melodies. This is melody A. All right, and this is melody B. So, after listening to these lovely melodies, which one do you think matches the story? Who thinks it's melody A? Please raise your hand. And who thinks it's melody B? All right, time for the big reveal. So, melody A is from the film Titanic, and B is from the film Psycho. So the question here is, why does the music from Psycho sound scary, while the one from Titanic sounds lovely or even romantic? Let's put this under scrutiny. So the answer is actually in physics, the wavelengths. So as you can see, on your left, the wavelengths are matching, so the peak matches the peak. Therefore, it creates a stable and pleasing sound. On the other hand, for Psycho, there's a clashing wavelength, much like this scratchy mic right now. Therefore, creating this unstable and clashing sound. This can also be explained by the frequency of ratios, the ratio of frequencies. So the frequency is basically how high or low a note sounds. So the higher the frequency, the higher the note sounds like. And on your left, you can see that the ratio of frequencies is 2/1, which is what musicians call an octave. And on your right here is what musicians call a nightmare. And this difference in physics actually also has an impact on our physiology, which is how our body responds. So for example, when you hear that high-pitched violin music, our pulse rate increases, our breathing rate increases, which makes us pay more attention to the horrors happening on screen, thus creating more alertness, making the horror films even scarier. And this leads us to mind game number 1, dance music at the factory. So in an experiment conducted across British factories, they gave dance music for women working at assembly lines to listen to, and as a result, their productivity actually increased by around 10%. So much like how the music in Psycho influences our physiology as we're watching the film, the dance music that they're listening to while they're working also influence their physiology. Or, as how Harold Burr's Mayer puts it, by auditory stimuli, we can increase or decrease muscular energy. We can change the threshold of sensory perception, and this is very important in precision work. I don't know about you, but that sounds like manipulation to me. So now, we've reached level 2. So this time, the two melodies matches the culture instead of the film genre. And this is the story. Clumsy panda dreams big, fights foes with noodle sticks. So let's listen to melody A. And this is melody B. All right, so this time, if you think it's melody A, please raise your hand. Nobody? Okay. So who thinks it's melody B? And time for the big reveal. So A is from Lion King, B is from Kung Fu Panda. So the question this time is, although both music sound consonant, meaning that the frequency ratios are simple, our brain likes it, it sounds pleasant. But how did we differentiate between the two? The answer lies in psychology, namely the schema theory, which is how our brain categorizes and processes information. So our brain creates these categories or schemas where we're able to group and identify information. And in our case, when we hear the instrument of erhu, a traditional Chinese instrument playing in the background, we immediately associate that with more of a Kung Fu Panda film. And this is because we formed these schemas around ancient Chinese music, or at least how pop culture portrays it to be. So it turns out that not only can our schemas be formed around external time periods, they can also be formed around the internal time periods, which is sort of like the mini eras in our own lives, like high school. So, for instance, you can think about, okay, hanging out with your friends, going to late night coffee shops, or tough periods and emotional breakdowns during the IB, you name it. Leading us to mind game number 2, marketing, or the art of making people buy things they don't actually need. And so when advertising, some car companies would use music that was popular when their target customers were in high school. And this is because the music that we listen to during high school are fundamentally intertwined with our social lives and our identities. So when we listen back, we feel this strong sense of nostalgia. So next time when you walk into a Tesla shop and you hear some Olivia Rodrigo, something's fishy. And we've reached level 3. And this time the game's a bit different as well. So instead of listening for the culture, we're listening for which music represents the character. So telling the story of a character. And this is the story. A girl got a crush, left her homeland in a rush, lost her voice in a hush. This is melody A. And this is melody B. All right, so this time, who thinks melody A is the corresponding one? Please raise your hand. I see you, Brayden. Okay, who thinks it's melody B? And who thinks it's both? Yeah, it's actually both. So you might be familiar with Ariel's story from The Little Mermaid. She had a love at first sight and decided to give up her voice and her home and her family. For someone who doesn't know her, the list goes on and on. But surprisingly, Bertha, the antagonist from Jane Eyre, actually shared a similar life story. So she also abandoned her voice when she decided to leave to a foreign land where she doesn't speak the language at all. Therefore, both young ladies here have lost their voices. However, the music seems to teach us to feel about them in a completely different way. So with Ariel here, we're taught to empathize with her and even root for her quest for true love. On the other hand, for Bertha, she's not so fortunate. Every time she appears, horror music appears. So we're not taught to empathize with her, but we're taught to fear her for her mistakes and the consequences of them. And this leads us to mind game number 3, how music impacts our moral judgments. So an experiment was conducted to see whether music impacts the way we judge other people's morality. And as it turns out, when we listen to happy music first, we were more generous when we judge other people's mistakes. But when we listen to music that evoked negative emotions, like anger, fear, sadness, we were harsher. So putting that lens into the real world, the impact is actually pretty scary. It can influence propaganda, politics, or even create stereotypes. To sum up, music is a language that can sometimes speak louder than words. Whomever the manipulator, music is an invisible yet powerful weapon. So next time when we hear something suspicious, maybe we can think about the mind games of melodies. Thank you.